let's get into this. So, what are essential oils? This is a question I get asked often, okay? Essential oils are basically they're little tiny oil sackets that can be found on almost every plant out there, I believe. And what those little oil sacs do is they prevent things like disease moving into the plants. They're kind of like the immune system for that. They can also deter things like insects, and they help ensure that the plant can create new plants, so procreate. And so that's basically it, right? It's a defense, it's an immune system, and it continues the life cycle of the plant. So when we look at essential oils and the human body actually responds very well to plant-based molecules. So this is why we often hear things about how beneficial it is and why we need our vegetables and why plant-based anything is supposed to be great. Now, with all that in mind, plants can still be toxic if they're used inappropriately or wrongly, right? So we have to bear in mind that just because it's natural doesn't mean it's 100% safe. We still have to use the appropriate cautions when it comes to that. So that's kind of where I come in handy, because I teach you about the safe and best protocols when it comes to your holistic health, and specifically as an aromatherapist, how to use oils in the best way possible, ensuring your health and anybody else that may be affected by them. Okay? So I'm going to get into the 3 ways that you can use an essential oil. But before I do that, I want to distinguish the line that is the Holistic Aromatherapy certification in Canada versus other practices in aromatherapy. So in holistic aromatherapy in Canada, in our curriculum, we are taught about topical and aromatic application, okay? So topical application is super simple. It is basically putting oils on the skin, okay? Or anything that's topical. Remember, our skin is basically, there are dermal layers that are similar to like sponges, and everything we soak in eventually does enter the blood, and it will cross our liver at some point and such. So it's still very effective to use oils topically. In holistic aromatherapy, we do not advocate for neat use. So neat means undiluted essential oils. We do advocate dilution, and we start at very low percentages to ensure that you're not going to develop a sensitivity to topical use, to ensure your own safety, and depending on the age or the phase of life that you're in, like whether you're expecting or not, those dilutions can change and shift, okay? So sometimes this is why it's like so important that you can touch base with a holistic practitioner. Plus, even though these are natural compounds, they can still interact with medications that you may or may not be on for health conditions that you're trying to either wean or use as a complement with aromatherapy, right? And vice versa. So sometimes it can be dangerous to be using essential oils and medication at the same time, because it can either make one or the other ineffective. It can exemplify the benefits that you're having, so it can almost cause like a bad reaction because it's making you either too sleepy, or you could end up with a reaction because of it that is risky and bad. Or it could, like if a side effect of a medication, was digestive discomfort, and then you took an essential oil that emphasized that, you might end up feeling worse instead of better, right? Which isn't the point of the aromatherapy. Now, aromatically, when we use oils aromatically, we can apply the oils in a diffuser as often. So I recommend 4 to 6 drops is a very good starting point for diffusers. I have had people who were unsure and were putting like 10 and 15 drops. I wouldn't start there. I think that that's actually too much. You can usually tell if you're using too much oils because you'll end up with a headache. Now, aromatically, you can also just apply it topically and then breathe it in, or you can try and breathe it straight from the bottle if you want, but I find that you're allowing a lot of the oils to evaporate, so you don't really need to do it that way. And you can get into things like aroma inhalers, so there are huge aromatic benefits. And then we get into things like And then we get into ingestion. Okay, so this is the part where I want to distinguish holistic aromatherapy from other types of practices. So in the holistic aromatherapy, we don't advocate ingestion. There are a few reasons for that. First, we don't know enough about the human physiology in our course. It's a 400-hour course that covers the chemistry of essential oils and plant-based medicines. It does cover a little bit of energy work with a small chapter on chakras. And we get into chemical constituents of the essential oils. So there's a whole chemistry approach that's really important and necessary in aromatherapies, which kind of distinguishes us from people who might be educated in what oils can do versus how they actually work, right? And we also cover physiology and anatomy. So we actually understand a little bit more about like the actual body and what it's doing in our body, or things that can happen in our body and systems in our body, right? When we use oils internally, there's a lot more that needs to be calculated or considered when we do internal applications. So first, oils are volatile compounds, so they can have some negative reactions to some individuals from internal usage. So it's important that you're either working with a practitioner who's experienced and educated in how essential oils work and can guide you on what the appropriate way to use them is. Or if you feel that you have done enough of your own research and science, you've got enough of the studies and experience, and you want to dive into using them that way, that's certainly your risk to take, but it's not something that I can advocate as a professional. I am happy to provide you with the science in both streams. And I do provide science that can be either doTERRA specific or unbiased. So I can give you both streams of that so that you're getting an actual unbiased opinion. So internally could be, some people like to put drops of oils in water. Some people like to add them to vitamins as practitioners. There is such thing as using them internally in all different ways. There's suppositories and capsules, and so I mean there's lots of creative ways that oils can be used internally, but that's a whole other certification program. For me to be qualified to talk to you about internal usage of aromatherapy, I would have to take an international certification course in aromatic medicine, which they currently have in Australia, but we don't have that in Canada. So it's not really necessarily recognized by bodies, and I'm not even sure we could become insured to do it because it crosses almost a medical barrier boundary. But it is something that's in the works, and it's definitely a course that I'm going to take, whether I can utilize it yet or not, because eventually I will be able to. So that kind of explains the 3 uses. If you have like questions or comments on how to do that, do let me know. As part of my wellness community, I am open to having conversations about everything. The doTERRA does advocate ingestion in a lot of ways, but they also often put to consult a doctor or a healthcare practitioner. So it's really important to understand that even though they've provided you with a lot of the guidelines and stuff, it's up to you to know your body and use things in an appropriate way with that in mind. So it's not necessarily a permission card to go do what you want and when you want to. It's just a perspective of an alternative way of doing it if you have all of the variables in place to use it that way. Okay? So that would be the 3 ways and what oils are. I'm going to get